Hi, and welcome to another edition of the Trustcast Show. And I'm happy to have with us Ogor Winnie Okoye. Welcome to the show, Ogor.
I'm excited to be here.
That's fantastic. Well, Ogor came from a family of lawyers in Nigeria. She graduated top of her class, then moved to America and put herself through law school here while raising three kids. Today, she runs a law firm, coaches people through life's hardest moments, and just published her second book, all while being a mom of five, married 27 years to a man she calls my boo boo. And so, first question. You wrote your first book after going through a miscarriage, a marriage in crisis, and overwhelming stress. What was the moment you realized the answer was already inside you?
Ooh, Zane, that is a great question. Yes, the bio is essentially the bio of someone back in 2007, 2008, 2009, about to crash. I came here very young because I fell in love with the muscular, boo boo, just beautiful man. I fell in love, and my coming to America was as a result of that. But when I came to the United States, it felt like being dropped in the middle of an ocean. When you are 20 and it's a new culture, and all you know is what you read from books, you don't recognize or realize the enormity of the challenges that you're going to get. And then, so the first shock was coming here, Zane, realizing that, oh my God, my law school degree, even though it's a common law country from Nigeria, and I'm sure you know Nigerians are excellent people, but that law degree didn't matter, Zane.
Right.
I needed to go back to law school, and it was the first shocker. And not anymore. Foreign trained attorneys are now able to kind of wave in and take the bar exams, but when I came in the late '90s, that
So,
option wasn't
one
here. Yeah.
interesting thing was that, Abe Lincoln, one of our most famous presidents, didn't go to law school.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So go look it up. It's very interesting. He was self-taught.
Oh
Absolutely
wow.
brilliant man. But so there's still places in the U.S. you can go and just take the bar exam. Anyway,
New
go
York,
ahead. So
yeah. Saying New York was one of those places, but I didn't live in New York. I lived in Massachusetts, and
yep.
Massachusetts required me to go back, and so that was exactly what I did. But I told them, listen, I graduated top of my class. I know this class. I know real estate law. I know, they're like, no, show us. And that was how I did the first year, and I showed them, and they kind of shaved off 1 year. So I graduated like a year before my classmates with a JD. So I was happy about that. But then there was something you alluded to, which is also the fact that I had three babies back to back to back. You're 20 something years old, you have three babies, all in diapers, in law school. That was insanity. But you'd realize really soon that I'm kind of like a little off.
I'd say energetic is more what I.
Eccentric too, but the result was that there was a lot of stress in my personal life, and the stress kind of poured into my marriage, and I had a miscarriage and all of it. And then I started searching and asking those big life questions. I guess people begin to ask those questions later in life, but I believe I was in my maybe early 30s when I started asking those questions. What am I here for? Is this it? This is not success. Money isn't really success. What exactly is the secret to a life of fulfillment, a life that enriches me, a life that helps me enrich the world? Those kinds of questions. And that's when I began the journey that led to my first book. And that is the journey that I teach in workshops. That is the journey that I apply in every aspect of my life, which is awakening and unleashing the divinity within each and every one of us, Zane. Because we all have the answers, only that the answer is that we can't do it on our own. We must dig deep to awaken the divinity within us. arm in arm with the divinity within us, life becomes less stressful, less overwhelming, because we were never meant to do it on our own. And religion, spirituality gives it to people, but unless and until we begin that journey, life will be a series and series of problems. So it's the process of awakening and unleashing that giant divinity within us that would make us courageous, unstoppable, indestructible, kind, more loving, more gentle, and that's sort of like pours into every area of your life. My husband, I remember my husband looking at me and saying, "Who is she? Like she's not attacking anymore. She's now kind of a gentler, more loving version of herself." And I
So,
saw
so,
that.
so I want to interrupt you because I want to dive into that. So you said your husband said suddenly you had. So what happened there to make that kind of transformation?
So what happened there, Zane, is that you realize that the next person isn't the problem, that the problem is you, the person staring back in the mirror, and that if you're able to embrace and acknowledge the fact that you are as flawed as the next person. So it's a journey of love. So if you read my book, Awaking and Unleash Your Victor, is a journey towards love, because love is the ultimate calling. And not to sound all churchy, but God is also love. And the minute people wholeheartedly begin embracing love, you realize that the next person isn't looking like a problem anymore, because you are approaching the next person from a lens of empathy, kindness, acceptance, recognition of the same things that you're battling. So I think my husband saw that in me and was happy. Um, yeah.
So you won the Jurisprudence Award for Tort Law at Suffolk. What did that recognition mean to you as an immigrant mom juggling everything? Was that at the point where you were, also feeling this
It was.
everything was going wrong?
It was, Zane, and coincidentally it was. So you see that problem with outward success, and internally people struggle, but other people are looking at it outwardly and thinking, oh my God, no, but you're broken inside. So, yes, it was essentially that period. I was the best graduating student in tort law, and that recognition was everything. But then when I began the journey, I realized that the external validation isn't it. You're never gonna be fulfilled with the external validation unless and until you begin the internal, backbreaking, lonely, solitary journey of awakening and unleashing the victor. And everything in your life will magically be impacted. I remember my children always saying, "Mom is always happy," because that was not the mom they knew when I was going to school in the morning, coming back. It was crazy, but yeah. And the journey, it doesn't end, Zane. Because when I teach these workshops, I say to my clients, this is not a one off. This is every day of your life choosing to elevate, rise higher, and choose love, which is so difficult, especially for someone like me who came in and all I had in my brain was land of the free and home of the brave and all the wonderful things. And jumping into the ocean, realizing, no, it's really not what it is. I remember the first time I was in court. I started off as a bar advocate, saying I was in court, and then I looked at the dock. Everyone there was like brown and black people. And I said to myself, what's going on here? Is it that people of color are fundamentally like skewed towards committing crimes? What is going on? Like I battled with it
Hmm.
until I realized that no, this is a well orchestrated pattern that is embedded in the judicial system, but also just like embedded in the culture. And so when I saw the fact that these historically marginalized people and people of marginal means just were not getting what I consider justice, it changed me in a fundamental way. And I remember saying to myself, none of the clients that I represent will not get my highest, best potential in terms of my fight, my passion, my empathy. And I must strive to communicate the same to the jurors. And Zane, I am proud to tell you that for every jury trial that I've had in the last, I want to say, I try to communicate that, and the verdicts reflect that. Because what they are looking for, essentially for me, for jurors, what they are looking for is someone who has a champion, who has someone fighting for them, someone who makes them see that their client is a human being and communicate the story of their innocence. And I think that, and that also comes from the awakening journey. When you are awake or when you are awakening, you just handle things differently.
So I'm not quite sure where to go next here because I was going to talk about your law firm, but I kind of want to talk about your book and the rest, and maybe we'll just circle back to maybe we'll have to have a second podcast. So, so let's talk about. You talked a bit about how you had this metamorphosis, but I still want to dive in deeper to that, where you were an unhappy person and now we just had this little interaction. We had a little interaction before we went on, and we've had this little interaction here on the podcast, and you seem like such an incredibly happy person. So was there a single trigger that kind of like, or was there a process that you went through? And you talked about your workshops too, and so I want to dive into that a little bit.
Okay, Zane, this is a great question. So, process, yes, it's an ongoing process. But was there something? I think I want to say that there was a rock bottom that I hit, and it pertains to my marriage. I was ready to walk. I remember the day, like, I couldn't do this anymore. Like, I had a miscarriage. I was overwhelmed with life. Um, I was seriously contemplating just walking away from the marriage. Can you imagine if I had done that? But it was also because I was looking at the other person and not taking any responsibility or self accountability, which for me is the first cardinal rule of the awakening journey, is self accountability. The fact that it's not the other person, it's you. So what do you begin? It's the process. It's something I call the zone of the UISA. It's unbiased introspective self analysis. And it's a very lonely, crazy, overwhelmingly fearful place to be. And it's something that I say in my workshops you can also do with a person, but if you feel confident that your end goal is unleashing, that you must, as a matter of necessity, be honest with who you are. So, what are your vices and what are your virtues? So I knew then that I was very fearful of what people would think about me, fearful of even speaking out. Can you imagine an attorney being fearful of speaking out? Then how can you advocate for your clients when you're fearful of speaking out? But I also know that I had virtues. I had talents that are God given talents that I've never kind of like exploited or maximized. And so what I did was every day I chose one thing that made me so scared. So I said, every day I'm going to do one thing. So I started with saying, yes, this client has this case coming up. The government, and I say this all the time. I say this when I give talks. I say my day in court often depends on the socioeconomic level of the client that I have with me, as well as the race of the client. I can predict, Zane, how my day is gonna go. So you're trying to convince the Commonwealth or the officers or the prosecutor's office that this person is deserving of a second chance. Perhaps can we explore probation or whatever? If the person looks like you, Zane, they're probably going to consider that. If the person looks like me, it's a bigger fight. It's going to take time. So, and I said to myself, part of is speaking out and advocating for my client. So they said no. And you know that this client is really innocent. What is the next possible best thing you can do for him? You know that they can't plead guilty because it has immigration consequences. So what I do is part of the kind of law that I practice is something called crimmigration, which is a combination of criminal defense and immigration law. So if my client who is an immigrant pleads guilty or makes an admission to this kind of case, that means they might be deportable from the United States. So that is like a catastrophic consequence. So see, it's no longer the criminal matter. It's intertwined with immigration, Zane. And if they were to plead guilty, which would have no consequence if my client was American, if my client was a U.S. citizen, but I can't help them walk away with that kind of consequence because it's devastating. You're looking at separating them from their families. So I knew when I was going through this awakening journey that the government didn't accept the plea negotiation, the agreement. There was no agreement. Okay, the next thing is we got to try this case. So, and I am mortified. Like, I came to the country, I don't have the connections, I don't have the mentors, I don't have, but what I have and what I've always had was that I worked hard, but I also read a lot. I read every day. My children and my husband and my staff probably will tell you the same thing. I'm reading every day because, I also believe that if you're not reading, if you're not growing, you're probably shrinking and dying. So I read every day just to keep me going. And so trials where I was terrorized by the idea of that. Think about that. You are new in the country, you have an accent, you are not even sure what you're going to do with this client. And if you accept the plea, or if your client accepts the plea, they are going to be deportable. So what I started doing was, during the process of the evolution, the awakening process, was doing those things that I feared the most. And that the trials were one of those. So Zane, I want to say, in those early 2000s, I don't necessarily get what it is that I wanted, but I fought hard for the client. And then now trials are second nature. Like, if the government knows I'm going to try the case, they probably shouldn't try the case, right? But that is what you do in order to awaken. So you bolster what it is that you're afraid of. And like a muscle, Zane, it becomes stronger and stronger. So that is a process of unbiased introspective self-analysis where you're using the things that you want, the tenets you want in your vote. If it's courage, you're doing the things you are terrified about. If it's love, you're trying to stay away from things, people, and that will lower your vibration. And that's really what it is. It's a journey. It's a process. It's not a one-off thing, but it's also something that if you begin, Zane, every area of your life will exude that level of growth that comes with the awakening.
So, Augur, you started your firm, Boss Legal Group, in 2004, as solo practice. What does that look like now? Just out of curiosity,
We're doing
is it still?
fantastic job. I have, so I should tell you, because I didn't have a lot of mentors when I was coming on, you didn't have the connections. I said to myself, I am fiercely dedicated to having mentees in my firm. So at this time, we have two high schoolers, we have three interns from the community college, and we have two, I think they're lawyers because they're trying to sit for their bar exams. So the two lawyers that sat for their bar exams and my legal assistant. So on a regular day, probably like 7 people. Yes.
Interesting. So, when you came out, you didn't just automatically start your own legal firm, did you? Did you work for a different firm, another firm?
You better believe it. My husband took a look at me and said, "Baby." So I interviewed for a lot of jobs, Zane. They love your resume. You go for the interview, you don't get a call back. That's reality.
Mm-hmm.
And then before I took the bar exam, there was some place that is like a place for people with disabilities and all of that. I did a couple of months there, and then I took my bar exam, and I never went back because that's not the kind of law that I wanted to practice.
Mm-hmm.
And then one day, actually, my husband and I had that conversation last night. I said, "Boo boo, I could not have done this without you." He remains till today, Zane, the steady presence for me in an unsteady world, and that is the truth. He said to me, "Baby, I think you can hang your own singles." Why the heck not? You come from a family where the women are fearless attorneys and doing, you can do it. So I literally enrolled into the bar advocate program, which is like you're a private attorney, but you represent indigent clients, usually people from historically marginalized communities, people of marginal means. You're representing them as their attorney in court. So that's how I started my practice, doing bar advocate work and doing my practice. So private practice attorney, doing bar advocate work. That was the place where I learned, because when you're in the courtroom every day, almost represent, that's where I learned everything that I know. I
How do
love
you
it.
make how do you make well, you have bills obviously, and you don't live in an inexpensive area of the country. So how did you do that? You know, I imagine there was a good bit of that was just pro bono. So when you don't have, I mean, when you start out, what was the secret to surviving at that point financially?
It was hard. It was hard. But they're not pro bono. When you're a private counsel, and you work for like the bar advocate program, you get paid, but you don't get paid a lot. But then you're
Right.
building your private clients. So Zane, my private clients till today, and I don't even do ads. My private clients till today are like family. And that's what I say even when I teach my classes. I say, when someone feels seen, when someone feels heard and acknowledged, and when someone knows that you're genuinely invested in getting their desired outcome, they will go back into the community and they're going to bring three more people. That is what it's been. No business loan like you're, but somehow you're still doing it.
So you say you report a 98% success rate on immigration and criminal defense. What are you doing differently that gets those kinds of outcomes, especially now?
Okay, so no, not now. Not now, Zane. The last year and a half has been sordid. It has been atrocious. It has been the hardest since I became an attorney. And I just, before I logged on, I just went out and I said to the staff out here, I said, what would you guys think the saddest case we've had? They're like, there's a lot of sad cases in the last year and a half because immigration has been extremely tough. But they told me that it probably was the case from last week. So the 98% was no, not a year and a half ago. It's been sorted in the realm of immigration. So I can say that for immigration. I can perhaps say that for criminal defense still. So let me tell you a story about a sad case from last week, Zane. Um, this gentleman, Carlos, came to the United States when he was 12. He came, so now today he is 42. So he came when he was 12 years old, and he came with his mom and his sisters. And the primary reason they came was that the father, the mom's husband, who is a stepfather to him, had shot the mom. So they fled from Guatemala. Um, so this is a guy who is entitled to relief. So he's been here. Yes, he has some criminal history because he came here when he was 12 years old, 13 years old. But he also has been someone who's gone through a lot of trauma in his life because of what he saw as a child. He's not squeaky clean. So I cannot say that he didn't have criminal entries. But the kind of relief he was applying required that in the last 7 years, it's called a NACARA relief immigration. In the last 7 years, he's committed almost little to no crimes. But he's been here for how long? So he's 42, he came at 12. But the judge said, yes, he meets all the requirements, but I will still deport him to Guatemala in the exercise of discretion. Discretion essentially, Zane, meaning I don't want to grant it. I don't want to grant him the relief. So this man who has not seen, does not know, is a carpenter, an electrician. He's contributed so much to his community, but has some criminal entries, like is being sent home. So it was a sad day last week. Um, I feel deeply. So it was one of those days I logged off from the hearing and I bawled like bawled for half an hour because I felt like he met all the requirements, but I don't want to give it to him. So that was a sad case. It's been pretty rough in the last year and a half.
Yeah, things have changed dramatically with immigration. So, what does that do to your practice? Now I'm going pragmatic, and I could tell I touched on a nerve there. But from a pragmatic standpoint, since so much has happened with immigration, is that still the major focus of your practice?
Thankfully not. And I say that all the time when I speak to young women, especially because I don't know if you know that I do a lot of work with young women. I love pouring into young women. I believe that women approach life differently. And when I speak with women and young women, I say to them, don't buy the lie that you can only be one thing or that you can only do one thing. No. So thankfully, our firm does more than immigration. We do criminal defense. We do crimmigration, which is that one I talked about, with a combination of criminal defense and immigration law. We do immigration, we do estate planning, and we do family law. So I am passionate about the financial aspect of all of this. So we also do financial planning and life planning in our estate planning practice. So every Saturday, we do free workshops on life planning, essentially educating the community on documents that they should proactively prepare: a will, a trust, a power of attorney, a healthcare proxy, a living will, um, 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 homestead protection, life insurance, annuities, things that they need to do. So we do that as free community service in the community. So it's not just immigration. We do that, and because I believe, Zane, based on what I've seen from my own trajectory, that when someone knows, they are more empowered to plan accordingly. I didn't know for a long time, and then when I got into life planning and financial planning, I realized that financial literacy is the singular catalyst, Zane, to wealth creation, wealth accumulation, preservation, and transfer. And I did not know so much. For so long, I knew nothing. And so I said, I will make sure everyone in the community who signs up for this free workshop attends this free workshop every Saturday, and you can join us tomorrow. Will learn something new and plan their lives accordingly. So no, we still do criminal defense work. Actually, last week, Zane, we had an incredible win. Same last week that we had the devastating loss that everyone in the office was crying, we also had an incredible win. Do you want to hear about that win, Zane?
Sure. Yeah, tell me about it.
Zen, it's an incredible story. So when I say to people that be careful how you view people who are incarcerated, there are a lot of people who did nothing but who were convicted. Yes, there are a lot of people who did something who were correctly convicted, but there are a lot of innocent people. So one of those innocent people, thankfully, was my client. She is a healthcare worker. She is from Nigeria. She goes to see she's a caretaker of this old woman, and she goes to
Mm-hmm.
see the old woman in the hospital, Zane, and she left the hospital, and a police officer now says someone had accused you of hitting on the old woman. She's like, no, you don't know what. He said it was a wrong person. There's no way. This is my client that I just changed her diaper and I left the hospital. And the police said no. A nurse said she observed you slapping the old woman. She came to my office with her family. I looked in her face and I said, Morenike, did you do that? She's like, Miss Okoye, how can she's bawling? She's like, I've done this work for 20 years. Those are the kind of clients I want to fight for. I fight for all clients, but that particular one, Zane, I knew the nurse was lying. Can you imagine someone?
So why would somebody tell
Thank
that
you.
kind of lie? Was there something else that was going on there?
Yes, and as I said to the jury, she was upset that my client had pressed the bell. Where you press to ask for help changing the old woman. So she needed a diaper for the old woman in the hospital. She pressed once, she pressed twice, she pressed the third time, and so the nurse had come in and was upset. she said that her countenance was upset. But then you go and lie about something that's going to lead to the loss of her license and possibly 2.5 years in jail. Zane, the jury took 20 minutes to return a verdict of not guilty because the nurse crumbled on the stand. Everything she said was a lie. In fact, the police officer that testified for the state said, no, she didn't say that to me. I'm like, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, last year she told the police officer A. Today she's telling us B, C, D, E, F. They took only 20 minutes and they came back with a resounding not guilty. I wept with my client. I hugged her and we wept together. Because imagine if he had gone the other way, Zane. 2.5 years in the House of Correction would have been the consequence, and perhaps deportation as well.
So, does anything happen to? So, to me, that there was a crime that took place there. It just was not the crime that was prosecuted. There was a different crime that took place there, and it was actually perhaps worse than the original accusation. And in fact, it was worse than the original accusation, because for somebody to be defamed and potentially loss of...
She lost her license. She has not been working since last year. So, Zane, when you hear stories like this, ask questions. There are a lot of innocent people. And because I go to jail and I go to the jail so often, and I talk to people, there were so many innocent people sitting there, Zane. So we are exploring at this time, perhaps there might be a cause of action for malicious prosecution on the part of the nurse for lying so blatantly. I don't do cases like that, but I said to my client, I will be talking to attorneys that I know that do cases like this, because imagine, but the jury saw the truth. So those are the things that, and thank God.
It seems like that there would be a case there that the hospital could end up being liable. They're the only ones who have any kind of pocket. But I mean, I don't know if that journey is more destructive. The actual prosecution of a case like that might be more destructive for your client than the potential outcome. I don't know. I guess that's something you probably want to discuss with her, but that's just my personal observation.
Yeah, and your observation is right, Zane, because she is the employee of the hospital. And for me, I said to the jurors, imagine he took the time to make this report and followed it up with appearing for testimony today. And then she fell apart. She eventually, at the end, she said, yeah, I didn't tell the officer that. I said, but why did you just say to me that you told that to the officer? But yeah, these are real life experiences. And when I look at the carceral system, and that's part of the things that kind of keep me up at night, I just know, because I see every day a different set of judicial system, justice system for people who are poor, and a different set of justice system for people who have influence, people who are rich. It's upsetting. Those are the kind of things that keep me up at night. But I also say to everyone, I say it a lot in my workshop, that we don't need to have a grand stage to make a difference in our little corner of the world. Like what you're doing, Zane, the show that you're doing and highlighting people and spreading the messages. This is doing something adding something to the world. Everyone can make a difference where they're at, because sometimes we think, I gotta have a big platform, and no. So Morenike's case was special. Last couple of weeks was special with that win, but it happens quite a bit in the system.
So let's talk about your workshops a little bit. We might go a little longer than I usually go, if that's okay. So tell me about your workshops. Are they paid workshops? Are they free workshops? How does that all work? And what do you do in those workshops?
So it depends on the workshop, Zane. We do the financial literacy workshop, it's free. We do the life planning workshop, it's free. So for instance, the life planning workshop is the most popular one. It's free. It's not a paid workshop. I do it every Saturday. I jump on Zoom. People sign on, but you have to register. So what we talk about is about planning for incapacity, planning for disability, planning for the ultimate, which is death. In my culture, people don't want to talk about things like that, but it's inevitable. We always feel comfortable talking about it happening to other people, but I want to ask people if they're 18 years old. If you are 18 years old, you should be in this workshop. If you have a home, you should be in this workshop. If you pay into any kind of retirement planning, or you should be in this workshop. If you care about your wishes being respected, you should be in this workshop. And then we walk through the various kinds of documents that you need to have in your arsenal, why a trust-based planning is better than a will-based planning, the principal reason being the avoidance of probate, but also the fact that it's private, but also the fact that your wishes are respected, the fact that if you have minor children, you don't want some random person be appointed their guardian. And I always use real life stories because I encounter people in my day-to-day life. I always tell the story of this woman that is like not very friendly with the younger sister, but she died intestate. And everyone knows she's not spoken to the sister in years. They are arch enemies. But the babies, guess who is going to end up taking care of the babies because she died intestate? Yes, sister. And so the requirement of making sure that you have all those documents together, you review those documents with our firm. So people walk out of the workshops really asking pertinent questions, and so that's for the life planning. I don't call it estate planning, I call it life planning. And then the benefit of having a trust-based planning, the probate process. I don't know if you know a lot about the probate process, Zane. It's long, expensive, arduous, frustrating, and all of that. And the better alternative is to avoid it by getting your trust in place and not going to the courthouse to fight all these years and then ending up having its public proceedings so anyone can go to the courthouse to see what Zane left behind and see does Zane owe me a credit card debt? Capital One coming to check if anyone owes them. But a trust is private.
So why doesn't a will work as well as how does a trust work better than a will?
That's a great question. So a will is not self-executing. A will still needs to be validated by the court, right? So the court has to look at the will to determine whether or not the will is even valid as a preliminary consideration, and a will does not avoid the probate process. So with a will, if you die with a will, you're still going to go to court to have the court do the preliminary thing of evaluating the will and then appointing whoever you said is going to be your executor to manage the affairs in your will. So it's still going through the probate process. But the trust is a private, confidential thing. It avoids the probate process because you say exactly what it is you want. So the kind of trust that I'm explaining is something called a revocable living trust, or RLT. So a revocable living trust avoids probate. You're going to be the initial trustee saying, okay, this is how I want my affairs to be managed. You can put your home in a trust. You can put the things you value, your LLCs, the things that you value inside your trust. When you do that, God forbid the inevitable happens, you don't have to go to the courthouse. The person that you appointed your successor trustee just looks at the document and implements your orders based on your trust document. So it's private. You can file something in Massachusetts called a certificate of trust. That's the only thing that is filed in the registry of deeds. So it's private. No one knows that it exists. So your Capital One and those sneaky credit card companies are not coming to sneak because it's not there in public. So, and another thing I love about the trust is the fact that it actually, your wishes are respected, because you say exactly how you want it. If you have a child that is particularly problematic, you put the spendthrift and you say, okay, I want you to give the distribution when they're 25 as opposed to when they're 19 or 18, or you know what I mean? Like I want my trustee to do so. Everyone should really attend a workshop, or at least at a minimum attend the workshop to understand the process.
So let me so I'm running out of time, but let me do some quick fire answers just to lighten things up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So first job you ever had?
walking in my dad's gas station.
The song that always puts you in a good mood.
Oh my God, Celine Dion. I love Celine Dion. I probably can sing all her songs. But Celine Dion, um, Immortality. It was Celine
Okay.
Dion and the Bee Gees, Immortality.
So, a favorite Nigerian dish you can't live without.
Oh my God, jollof rice. Jollof rice, Zane. You should also try jollof rice. If you come to Boston,
Describe
I'll
it.
make
Just
you.
spell it to me. I really love to cook,
Oh,
and I love to cook new things. So
uh,
spell that jollof rice for me.
the way it sounds, J-O-L, like in lemon.
Yeah.
L-L-O-F, jollof rice.
Okay. I will look up a recipe for jollof
And it's
rice,
so
and
good.
I will actually cook it. Okay. So, best piece of advice your parents gave you.
Oh my God. My dad will tell you, still says that you can't walk through life alone. My dad is 86 this year, or will be 87 this year. No, 1938. I don't know. 86, 87. I don't know. One of those. But my dad, Zane, is a deeply spiritual man. If you meet my dad, Zane, or if I were to predict what dad is doing right now, he probably is in meditation, praying his rosary. We were raised Catholic, so
Uh-huh.
dad repeats to you, "Be careful." I want to say the quote exactly how he says it. Like, be careful about people you meet and how you treat them, because you might meet them again on your way down. Like, essentially, how you treat someone or how you treat people is everything. So dad believes in just being careful the way you treat people, because you're on your way up and you think it's all good, but life is about ebbs and valleys, and so dad says that a lot, and I think about that a lot in my client interactions, just knowing that, you know, everyone, and especially kind of clients that I have, but also everyone want to be seen, want to be heard, want to be acknowledged, and that makes a lot of difference. Just treat people good.
So, what does Boo Boo call you?
Bubu calls me Atalugo. Atalugo.
Atalugo. And what does that mean?
Ugo is a bird that is this beautiful bird. Um, well, he calls me baby all the time, but if he's really, if the love is really doing him, like it's really, he calls me Achalugo. That's my Achalugo. So Ugo is a beautiful bird. It's what's Ugo in English? So Ugo is a bird that is like, Ugo is the eagle, no? Is it? I think Ugo is the eagle bird, and it's considered in my culture to be a powerful, beautiful bird. So Achalugo is like my Ugo, like, so it's like an endearing name you call someone who is like your, I guess, your ride or die. He is,
So,
yeah.
how about this one? Guilty pleasure TV show or movie?
Oh my God. Do you want me to really, really be? I don't watch TV. I'm kind of
Okay.
country. I'm normal, Zane. I don't watch TV, but let's see. If I have to choose, I don't watch TV, so I don't know about shows. But if you
Or
ask me,
movie?
if you, or movie, all time classic. I don't know if you know that Nigerians Nollywood movies are like the best besides Hollywood movies. Nollywood movies are like top notch. So I watch a lot of Nollywood movies too. You can get them on YouTube, and um, there's a lot of them. I can't even think of one, but I watch
Okay. Oh, I didn't even
Nollywood.
know that existed.
Oh, now
So,
you
but
know.
yeah, now I know. I'll have to go look it up. Okay. So, if I guess we're running out of time,
Yeah.
but if someone wants to find out more about your workshops or needs legal help in Lynn, Massachusetts, or somewhere around there, how would they get in touch with you?
So I'm also licensed in New York, Zane. So I always say Massachusetts and New York. You can get in contact with us from Bus Legal website. So buslegals.com, BOS legals, legals.com. Um, Everything is there. But you can also, and I really say to people, you can also just say hello on social media. Um, um, Sometimes I post on LinkedIn, but I love Facebook. Facebook is for me is so maybe because I'm older, but it's more interactive and my kind of I don't know, my kind of like it's more laid back. It's not. Sometimes I feel overwhelmed with LinkedIn. I feel like oh you gotta be qualified, you know. But yeah, Facebook I know LinkedIn is too much sometimes for my brain. But Facebook is a lot still. You can just say hello on Facebook. My name is my name everywhere. Ogor Winnie Okoye.
So, I think that was great. We had a good time. I really appreciate you being on the show today.